were already extreme anti-women. When this was so easily predictable and was predicted by everybody in 2008 when the economy crashed and everyone was like, right, well, the fuckers who created this mess will face zero consequences except one guy who goes to jail. They will face no consequences. They will get bailouts, and then everyone's going to blame immigrants, and they're going to continue to just create more dividing lines between people, so that you don't develop any kind of class consciousness, because this is a sickness that America has that we have caught. We used to be, I think, a bit more class conscious in this country, and we're kind of losing that a bit. We're not as bad as them, but it's just, but none of them identify as, even if they're working class, they don't really.
No, that's called a working class, middle class.
Yeah, but I think it's not even more than that, because in Scotland, like, if you live here, you're Scottish, and it doesn't matter where you're from or what colour you are, whereas they'll do like African American, you're like a Jewish American, you're an Italian American, whereas we're just like, we do, in spite of the kind of maybe 50-50 divide that we have on the kind of Union UK question, broadly speaking, there's quite an understanding of like what Scottish values generally speaking are. We do kind of, broadly speaking, talk in one voice about the high, like, most people in this country would be like, Trump's a cunt. Like, if you really polled that, it'd be pretty clear that the majority of folk would be like, that guy's a fucking idiot, because there would be something not inherent, but just about the vibe. Yeah.
Comedy shows come over here to talk to Scottish people just for the lulz of like, what do you think of Trump? He's a fucking asshole.
We do have, we're not to put kind of England on blast again, but they feel like they've bitten on this kind of like slightly more divisional thing than we have up here. I agree with what Laura's saying, that you're beginning to see that crack. They're trying to tap into us. But if you go back to 2016 with, like, you know, Brexit and stuff like that, the great excuse by the British media has been, yeah, but we got hacked by the Russians. And I'm like, well, what happened to us then? Did we were also, our Facebooks all get hit with that shit, and we were like, no, we're not voting for Brexit, and we think Trump's a dick. So what is this about then? This is actually a more deep-rooted cultural thing, isn't it?
It's because you're not in.
Yeah.
Because the banks fucked you all in 2008. We were all there.
And we seem to have kind of put those dots together in a way that this kind of divide and conquer thing.
Yeah.
And I think that other European countries, I know we've been talking about Germany's had some kind of unfortunate rise-ups of very bad parts of its past. But again, there's more of a kind of sense of we're European and we are this, and we're not going to be sort of divided as much. And I think that it's like a virus that America's putting out. But this has got to be driven by Russia, hasn't it? To come back, it's a Russian playbook, isn't it?
Yeah, a lot of it will. But also, America is also just a very individualist like culture. If you can get in your car and drive for 11 hours and still be in the same state, that's tech. Like, if you're in Texas, you can do that.
People do that to go and buy a donut in Texas.
If I drove for 11 hours from here, I don't even know. Would there be any UK left? Like, it's just. Well, is that still in the UK? Well, it's probably going to take that.
It probably depends on who you ask in Cornwall. I mean,
depends how fast you drive as well.
Well, yeah, but I mean, Cornwall is really a Celtic nation.
Well, we can take them back.
The only time I've ever seen America united was after 9/11, and they became monstrous. It's the only time in my fucking life I've seen them.
Bloodlust.
It really was like a, fuck me, this is a really dangerous nation of people we've got here. Because we were talking about, it was the band that got cancelled, the Dixie Chicks, where they're like, we don't think this Iraq war is a very good idea. And it was like, get the fuck off the airwaves. Like, everybody was like, fuck you.
I know.
And we in this country, we didn't.
A cracking song about that.
Well, they changed their name to the Chicks because they wanted to distance themselves from the Dixie part.
Whereas you contrast, like, when the Iraq war thing happened here, that it was, I mean, apart from Blair, it was, everyone was like, oh, this is a shit idea, isn't it? You know, and that we've been on a slow slide to becoming more like America. And that is the frightening bit of, if they were ever to do that again, but with some of this rhetoric in play, you start to think, oh dear, this could go very badly.
I mean, America has now, this is a coup. What is going on here is a fucking coup. Elon Musk is taking over the fucking payment system for government finances. They are purging the FBI of people who want to prosecute criminals. He let out the guy that fucking invented Silk Road.
Roads.
I did defend Ross Ulbricht slightly, and that the whole case of him like hiring hitmen and stuff like that, the guys who were running that ended up in jail for corruption. So there's not really much evidence,
Is that-
solid evidence that
He did.
definitely did that.
He
But
did try and do the Dread Pirate Roberts defensive, like, I'm just the latest Dread Pirate Roberts, though, didn't he? Or was it that he'd sort of started it and passed it on to somebody else, and somebody else was now Dread Pirate Roberts?
I don't know. I mean, I certainly don't think he get a fair trial, and he get a sentence of 2 life sentences plus 30 years.
It's a bit much for
And I
running the
think this
website.
might be the thing with Luigi of like he obviously did it, right? So he obviously did the thing that he's been accused of doing. He obviously shot the guy, but his right to a fair trial has been so heavily impeded by the way that the government officials in Meridia have behaved so appallingly, because he is entitled to the presumption of innocence and he has not been given that at all. So I don't know if there would be a mistrial. I don't know if they would let that happen, but it might be like in a few years' time, some populist who wants a sort of an easy win with Luigi supporters will
The thing I
pardon
don't
him.
understand is what was in it for Trump on that one.
Well, there was a lot politically in it
Yeah.
for him. Basically, he'd gone to the Libertarian Party conference, and they've been taken over basically by far-rights,
Yeah.
who are like both
could have played
Trumpers,
that.
and they've just used that base to try and promote him, basically, because that was their take. But yeah, basically they said, we'll support you if you release Ross Ulbricht, because for a long time it's been predominantly, libertarians who've been in that sort of circle that have kind of appreciated
I mean,
this crypto type of stuff.
don't get me wrong. I do think 2 life sentences for basically running underground Amazon.
That's a massive
It's-
overreach,
Uh,
because
yeah.
that is basically what you're prosecuting for. You're prosecuting because it's for
Yeah,
you-
for people
you
who are
serve
selling
and
guns out
guns,
there. I'm just
yeah.
saying.
But
Well, no, he stopped that pretty early on.
Is that true?
you can buy guns in like Walmart though. Not taking them
Yeah,
out.
no, I'd be in favour of putting them in jail as well.
It's actually, out of all the kind of like online Tor marketplaces, his was kind of known as being actually
Pretty clean.
decent, and I actually had doctors on there who would give advice to people, is what you shouldn't do and when you're taking drugs and this
People
stuff.
they don't like that, and they don't like free doctoring.
No
And they would-
wonder they put him inside for 2 life sentences.
And the advantage is you don't need to buy the stuff like in a street corner off like some dodgy guy. And there's reviews, so people could say, well, that stuff is actually cut with like bad stuff.
There
and all.
was
So there was a kind of like slight kind of like more ethical way of doing it, if you can say that about drug dealing. So there was that, and he served 11 years. So that to be fair,
I think that's
probably
more than
enough.
enough.
yeah, a lot of the people who were also convicted of actually dealing the drugs, because he was just like the tech guy, obviously.
Yeah.
The actual drug dealers and people who've been involved even with like violent stuff who are also in the kind of Silk Road environment. None of them get anything close. Like most of them get like 3 or 4 years.
Didn't one seller on there manage to do a massive fucking heist by getting really, really good reviews off everybody and then there was some sort of special event thing, and he got everybody to pay him up front rather than it all being in escrow, and then just fucked off with everybody's cash.
Aye, rug pulls are very common in the crypto world.
Oh yeah, we love rug pull.
Oh yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, it was, although I feel kind of good for Ross to get out, everyone deserves a second chance, and he seems like a guy who actually, feels that he does want to do the right thing in the future. That's good, but the reason why he get released was absolute corruption.
Right.
And it's
That
Elon
makes
Musk.
it a bit clearer for me, because I did wonder, like, what the fuck?
Elon Musk X'd out about the pardon, and someone replied saying, "Great, does that mean I can buy my LSD online again?"
Was it Elon Musk?
So it was him as one of his burners.
Adrian.
Oh, so funny.
But all the kind of norms are just gone. Like, the idea that you could actually just buy your way out through, this kind of political corruption is just unbelievable. And I'm just wondering how much that will transfer to the UK. Because it does feel like we have a more kind of sense of fair play and kind of rules-based order And I don't know how much that's getting eroded. It's
It
hard
would
to
be-
tell.
It would be more worrying if the Tories were still in charge at Westminster, it has to be said, because, I mean, they'd gone fucking batshit.
They had, but I think that almost like GB News is always what I come back to with this, in that they tried to do a Fox News over here and we didn't really bite. So it's saying that there is a minority within the UK that is really cruel and mean, but there's not a general appeal to that, and I think you can see within that, and they do have to say that about the Americans too, that the voter turnout is going down. So if you think of it as like a TV show, people are tuning out. They don't actually want any of this. And I think in the UK in particular, there is that is a bit of a comfort, but I just don't know, because the thing that Iraq kind of taught us was, well, it doesn't really matter what we all think. It matters what Keir Starmer thinks or Tony Blair back then thinks. And I think that the worry I've got about where America is going with all this, as you say, like we're clearing out the FBI, where we're basically doing a coup. There could be a full circle moment here. So obviously 9/11 was not an inside job. We know that. But these guys are all quite conspiratorial, mad people. And it wouldn't be, I don't think, beyond the realm of possibility that they go, remember that thing we all lied about George Bush doing? What if we actually did that? Because what that proved was, if a national tragedy like that occurred, sorry to quote Norm, they would rally and they would get that bloodlust going. And that's when I'm thinking that there could be destabilize it, but then if something akin to a 9/11 were to happen, regardless of how evil the government is, which the Bush administration fucking was, they will go for it. And I don't know, I'm not saying that will happen, but
I don't think you could ever have a 9/11 situation. I'm not talking about the event, I'm talking about the reaction. You could never have that again, because at that point in 2001, the media diet that most people had was fairly controlled. So it wasn't as diversified as it is now. People now, one guy gets all of his news off Truth Social, another gets all their news off X, another gets all their news off TikTok, another gets all their news off YouTube Shorts. And it's not just diversified by platform, it's diversified by your algorithm. There's no unity, there's no truth, there's no objective truth in media
I do
anymore.
agree with that, but then you look again, the guys that were stood behind Trump at the inauguration, that's my concern about if you were starting to unify. So basically you're replacing the legacy media, but in effect you're going to use it for quite similar purposes.
I also think that when something really big happens, actually people do go back to the legacy media. And I'll give you a really minor example of this. Like, I, as a rule of thumb, never fucking listen to Radio Scotland. I'd pretty much rather drive a spike into my head than listen to Radio Scotland, right? But the other morning, like around the time of the storm and the day after, the best place for me as I'm walking the dog in the morning to find out actually, right, what's going on right now around me, was to listen to Radio Scotland. And so I did, and I'll bet you a load of other people did who don't normally bother as well, because you think, like, they're probably not going to have somebody going on like doing the SNP bad shit this morning. They're probably just going to be talking about schools and roads and trains and things like that. And so at these times people will go back to the legacy media so that they can find out exactly what's going on, because it matters.
People in their teens and 20s aren't doing that though. Their legacy media, that TikTok, social media, that is how they get their news.
Yes, I think that's exactly it. So if we fast forward maybe 4 years down the pipe, close to 10 years down the pipe, that's when I think you could be getting in the kind of the danger zone here, unless we course correct. Because even if it's not a conspiracy, even if it's just something like that happens, you've seen how they've been able to push the narrative around with January 6th. You know, it's the controlling of information. So in the same way that we
agreed upon terms,
what I was trying to say was just in a simple 1-for-1, the whole dossier about the Iraq dossier, everything around that, was they were able to completely shift the narrative in real time. We're going in there for weapons of mass destruction. All right, there aren't any. Regime change. And we'll just pretend that the whole WMD thing never happened. Like, I lived right the way fucking through that. So it's completely possible to get America to just do evil shit like that by controlling narrative and messaging. And I think it's conceivable that if you've got the major players involved in Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, really the whole thing, and then they can weaponize.
So what you're worried about, you're actually worried that, because I mean, then this has happened in Russia. The Chechenian sort of terrorist bombings were definitely a false flag operation by the Russian state themselves in order for them to have the war so that they could do exactly what you're saying. And we all know that Putin is fucking like this and
Yeah, feels
worm-tongue and Trump's here. So,
to the beginning of
but here's where you can probably calm down, okay? Do you really imagine that any of those fuckers are clever enough, organized enough, disciplined enough to actually manage to do it? Because all the people that they would need to actually physically do it will tell them to fuck off.
Also, they all fucking hate each other. They hate each other. There is not a single, not friendship, just even amicable feeling towards the other person amongst that whole group. They fucking hate each other. They are preying on each other's downfall. They're just all in this group because they have the same political aspirations and they want to get rid of their competition. They quite like the idea of tariffs because it means that their Chinese competitors will be a bit more expensive if they, like, when they come into the American market. So maybe you'll keep buying my shit Tesla cars. It's just like, but they fucking hate each other. There's no way they could pull off anything like that without them all like ratting each other out.
This is just the people we're aware of, though. There could be people in the background.
I know.
That's smarter than that.
You know, during January 6th, one of the most haunting things that stays with me was that there was a fucking chain of guys in all the fucking tactical gear walking straight through. We're like, well, that crowd is busy. There's a chain of guys, like hand on shoulder of each of them to fucking stay together. Those are the guys with the cable ties. And it's only by the fucking courage of like a few of the fucking Capitol Police that those guys didn't get in and start fucking hanging politicians. Yeah. We came that close that day.
I think what's kind of held democracies together in America and here is also that there is a bit of an understanding that all the politicians are the baddies, but like, okay, we can't really trust you lots, we've got to hold you to account. Whereas what has got quite Russian about the whole thing is now that, the state are the good guys. We love a bit of, because that's the perception by a lot of the Trump kind of fans.
Americans have Americans have always done this with the president. The way they've behaved with the president. As soon as I was aware of politics when I was a teenager, I remember the whole thing with even George Bush and Obama, and the way they would come out and everyone would be cheering, and I'd be like, I'm looking at Gordon Brown, being like, Gordon Brown walks out to the podium and everyone was like, Gordon, what's going on? It's like,
explain yourself.
What's going on here? Why are they acting like that's Prince coming out? Like, what is going on?
Because the president isn't Gordon Brown. The president is the Queen, the King.
I know.
It's a temporary moment.
They're fucking weirdos. It's like, no, this is,
yeah.
But they've always been like that with the president. This isn't a new thing.
It's the single argument for the retention of the monarchy that I actually agree with, although I don't agree with it. With the monarchy,
the serfs need somebody to cheer for.
Kind of. Yeah, that you might as well. That if you have a strictly defined like monarch role, that like they're the technical head of state and they're the person that you fucking trot out to like meet people and da 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 da. Like nobody else can be that. And it stops politicians.
The Irish have got an old guy with a dog. Yeah, that seems to work out.
I think our version of that's Lemmy.
Yeah.
I'm not even a huge fan of Lemmy, but I feel that he's kind of lefty Scottish, maybe kind of SNP adjacent, but he's not them.
No.
So, yeah.
I'm bitchy as fuck. I think the Irish method is better, whereby you have basically the elected head of state, but it is like a poet, an old guy with a dog who
expected just to shut up and shake folks' hands.
Yeah. But that's the problem. I mean, because that's all the president is, really. But they have, and so therefore we have vested this enormous amount of kind of kudos and respect and stuff in.
You are right about like they've always been like that though, because I was sort of going with it was like the Russians used to say, they all hate each other. That's right. Whereas it feels like the Russians have there's sort of an underlying ideology driving it in a way the Americans don't at the moment with their setup, unless his Free's correct. There's a kind of darker element we don't know about. If they could put that together, if they could have some kind of new American ideology that came on, and it became the idea Trump is going to do, he's just the president forever now. He becomes a Putin type figure. I think that's when it's probably in the danger zone, real danger zone. But I don't know if it'll ever get to that point.
How old is he now? He must be nearly 80.
Not old enough.
He's not. He's like, if he lasts 4 years, right, I'll be shocked. But I have a little, this is a little bit of a mad conspiracy theory, but I'll be delighted if it turn out to be correct. I think about 2 years in, he'll get like the old Russian window cancer. Like something will happen. That I have to say, that's not my gag. That belongs to a guy called Jeff Wise, who I love. He's an aviation journalist. Yeah, the old Russian window cancer, and it'll be Vance. And I've explained this before. Like if Vance serves less than 2 years as replacement president, he can do 2 more full terms, and they'll just cheat. I mean, if you look at the amount of voter suppression that went on, Trump didn't really win. I mean, obviously he's president and he's fucking won. But if you look at how many votes didn't get counted, they're like, no, he didn't. And this has been the steal all along. We make generalizations about America, and it's partly fair, but it's partly unfair, because what has happened is that over the last kind of 50 years, the Republican Party has so corrupted the electoral system, and they've always had more power than they should. It didn't used to be the Republicans, it used to be the Democrats, but there's been that kind of switcheroo. The southern states, the slave states, were given disproportionate power as a way to make them shut the fuck up and rejoin the Union. And that's why you've got 2 fucking senators for every state, irrespective of whether it's Montana or California. So like Montana's about 10 people and 5 horses. They've got 2 fucking senators, right? California is what, like the 5th largest economy in the world? And they've got 2 fucking senators.
I support the Californian independence movement.
Well, this is, yeah, exactly. And so this is what I'm talking about their system being so rigid and strong in some ways that it's become completely brittle and fragile.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's again why everyone was disengaging from it. But that kind of plays into almost what I was saying earlier on about, you're now able to make ungodly amounts of money off like a small minority of people that are really into a certain thing. So it's almost like the masses don't ultimately matter anymore. So even if, hardline was turning out to vote, well, that works for us because we just need the Nazis to vote.
Well, the more difficult you make it for people to vote, the less people do vote. And then when they do vote, and so one of the things from COVID is that a lot of people went over onto, postal voting, and a whole load of them just didn't get counted. Millions of them didn't get counted because unless it was an exact match on the signature. And newsflash, a lot of younger people never fucking have to really write very much anymore and don't have a formed signature the way that old farts like me do. And so,
that's fucking true of me. I mean, I'm like about to be 37 next year, and I mean, like, if you ask me to do my signature one after the other, like, it's in the ballpark. But I mean, I don't know if a fucking computer would actually genuinely be able to match that together. I mean, I've got chicken scratch handwriting.
Loads of young people's fucking votes got kicked out. Well, who the fuck do you think most of them were voting for? So, millions of ballots not counted, and if you actually correct for that, Kamala Harris probably would have got about 280 fucking electoral votes. So we're being unfair, but what has been happening is a slow coup, and voter disenfranchisement is the vanguard of that. And so there'll be more of that. And so, if Vance does get judged, and I mean, he's a brilliant nobody. He's a fucking glove puppet with Peter Thiel's hand up his arse, working the mouth parts.
So we should try and wrap this up now. So where do we reckon it's going then?
Bad.
Yeah, it's got to
go. Like, you remember that silly optimist that sat here 4 years ago? Yeah, she's gone. She's gone. It's going to be a fucking, like, there's real danger that the fucking beacon of democracy in the world is now going to be an autocracy. They may never have a fair election again in our lifetimes.
To be fair, I think the Democrats are going to take some of the blame for this, at least.
Yeah, for being absolute spineless cunts.
For being useless, but also, like, over the years, they have been, making the president a much more powerful position themselves.
But that's because of, that comes back to the stuff like the cloture vote and not being able to get stuff through the Senate, so they put things through on executive order instead of dealing head on with the fact that the cloture vote is anti-democratic.
Yeah, there's all these kind of norms that they have like discarded when it's been suitable for them.
Yeah,
when it's been to their benefit. All right, well, we won't declare war. We'll just like go and drone bomb that country and like blow up their hospitals because that suits us at this particular time. And then, of course, that same power wielded in the other side's hands is really dangerous. And getting rid of these kind of norms, you feel like you're moving the pendulum in your own direction, but it can just as easily swing back the other way. So I'm hoping that's what happens. in 4 years' time that, you know, they've gone so far to the, you know, far right, you know, it could be that just, you know, it swings back hard. And, well, even before the, like, 4 years, like in the midterm and stuff like that, could make a real difference how it pans out. But it's
the
not good.
the best thing that we can hope for in the short term is that in the 2026 midterms, they haven't had enough time to fuck everything up with regards to voting, and that there is a huge fucking uptick in the number of people who turn out. Because that's the other thing. Loads of people just didn't show up to vote.
Yeah, I mean, the Democrats did exactly what they did in 2016. They just put up the wrong person. I mean, Kamala was all right, but I mean, when I say she was all right, I mean, she was better than I thought, but I wouldn't go so far as to say, wow, you're good at this. You know, I think there must be somebody out
She
there.
was perfectly fine, and in circumstances, it was the best thing that could, like, it would have been much better if Biden had never tried to run, and if they'd had a proper, decent primary.
Well, to come back to what Free was saying as well, I mean, the Democrats, one thing that they're also very guilty of is turning the president into a kind of rock star type persona. And again, that's one of the things that, like, you know, when it swings back the other way, you know, rather than getting someone in there that can, you have to have charisma, you've got to have that, but be able to articulate, you know, here's how we are going to forward good in the world. I mean, it's not fucking difficult, which makes you think that, and that's my opinion now, that they're kind of, it's all just a big wheel and they're just part of that loop that goes round with it. I've not seen anything really, any evidence to the contrary. I mean, I think that this is why people have become so disillusioned in the States, because when Obama came in, change and all that, and very quickly realised, oh, wait a minute, this isn't going to change anything. And it's the same thing we're seeing with like Starmer and the Tories going. I mean, I sometimes forget the Tories are even out, because I feel that there's such continuity in play here.
I know it's always really funny when there's a politician on the TV and they're a government spokesman, and you do have a moment of, oh yeah, no, that's Labour. Yeah, he's wearing a red tie.
Yeah, it literally, yeah, you have to wait for the name bar to come up going, which one are you? Which side?
I just look at what colour tie they're wearing.
Yeah, I know, it's ridiculous. But I mean, yeah, America's pretty cool.
Unless it's a woman, and then you look at what colour scarf she's wearing.
I guess the main things for us to worry about.
Hashtag feminism.
Main things I kind of worry about is like, obviously, Ukraine war and what's going to happen with that.
Yeah.
So I don't really want to get into that because it's too depressing. But yeah, obviously that's a like podcast for another day. Another thing is like how much it's going to reflect on British politics, and obviously, like you've seen Reform getting much better numbers, even like higher than Labour. So some of the polls are really disturbing, to say the least.
But this is the problem. The Labour Party are falling into exactly the same fucking trap that the Democrats have, of thinking that the way to appease the right is to be a bit like them and not understanding, no, they're never going to vote for you, and all you're going to do is actually turn off your base. We need to be more like Finland. Finland's actually teaching their kids to, because obviously they live fucking next door to the Russians, they are teaching their kids to critically assess news material to look for disinformation. That's a fucking class that every kid gets taught in Finland. Finland are the only ones that have been and fucking arrested anybody on one of those fucking ships that keeps dragging anchors and breaking up cables. So Finland's like, is anyone else going to do anything about this? Right, fuck it, I suppose it's going to have to be Finland, is it? Right, I forget. Right, you fucking Sergei. On the boat.
I got expelled from my secondary school for making silly wee cartoons and doing a website criticising a lot of what the school was doing. And one of the fights was about, why are we not teaching media studies? I feel this is going to be, and this is exactly.
And why do we degrade media studies? Why do we make jokes about media studies as opposed to media studies, proper critical thinking about information?
Dealing with very, very smug teachers that thought I was talking complete nonsense. And you're going, all right, let's see how this plays out in the next 20 years, then see where we are. And that's, I mean, if you need to have a populace that are media literate, I think so much about it, even with filmmaking and TV, the audience, it's important that they know kind of how the plumbing's done a bit, so you can spot the secrets of all this. Because this is what I've been obsessed with this since I was a kid, about like magicians and wrestling, all this stuff of like how deception works, how you trick an audience, how you fool that, because that is what they're teaching. Is what you're wanting to learn, the tricks of the trade, if you like. So you can appreciate when it's done well for the sake of art, but then when it's being used maliciously in a different context, you go, okay, I'm not going to fall for that shit. Yeah.
And this is the Russian playbook, smoke and mirrors all the time. There are so many projects that there's probably things that we don't even fucking realize are them, but it was it first occurred to me, and it was actually listening to American media. It was Rachel Maddow, who is just one of the smartest people on the fucking planet. It was listening to her talking about what was going on at the Republican convention in 2016, where the only thing that Trump's team wanted changed by way of policy was to not support Ukraine. Because obviously in 2014, the little green men had walked into Crimea, and they wanted that change. And it was because Trump's fucking campaign manager was fucking ostrich leather guy who had been the fucking Malcolm Tucker for the Ukrainian fucking dictator. And you're just like, fuck me, the Russians are right there. They've got a fucking campaign manager. Like, the guy that's running the Trump campaign used to work for the Russians in Ukraine. And at the time, I remember trying to talk to people about this. I know, talk to you guys, and like, you could see it. But most people are like, what? What are you talking about? You know?
I think it's why Laura, I mean, she might say this a wee bit more when she comes back down the stairs. But like the generational switch, the change that's happened is environmentally, you were raised in the Thatcher years, so you knew the government was at it. My informing years were the post 9/11 years, where you know the media and the government are at it. But now the lot coming up now, these are the kids that were like born maybe just before 9/11. So they don't have that kind of looking for the trick.
I hate to break it to you, but the kids were born 10 years after 9/11. Terrifyingly, because you're an old cunt too.
I know, it hurts now. But
Welcome to the pack, fucko.
But I think that in that lack of analytical, where's the trick, what's the con, is not there in the way that, as I say, in the environment you grew up in with Thatcher, it would have been there. The post-night, watching how the media saying things back then that was so obviously not true, and the government saying things that were so obviously not true, and the media not calling out the government for saying things that were obviously not true, you just kind of, as you were forming as a human, you were like, all right, okay, I get it. So we have to be vigilant, and we have to go out and we have to sort this shit out. And I think that because the kids haven't really had a sort of significant, something so plainly obvious maybe as that or whatever, they're not really wired up to see the lies.
I don't know, because I think probably plenty of younger voters in America can see exactly what the fuck is going on with their parents' brains being fucking bleached by Facebook.
Because it's not what, this is, I was going to say, Laura, I might want to come in on this, because I think that's what you just said about the 10-year kids born 10 years after 9/11. That's kind of the blind spot that I'm having. Because you're right to remind me of that, because in my head I'm going like, well, I'm not old. Yeah. I'm one of the kids. And then
I do payroll, and sometimes when if we get work experience people in, I'm putting them on the payroll, and they give me their date of birth, and I'm like, what? And then you look at them and go, oh yeah, no.
Like his shoe's older than that.
Yeah.
Because the kids won't be seeing like what we were seeing, which was bluntly, this was the coffins coming off the planes. The Americans were much better at kind of not showing a lot of that shit on the telly. But it was like, right, we can now see the tangents. Like, I remember like when shock and awe happened, I know we're using that as like a turn of phrase now to talk about politics and TV and whatever else, but like when shock and awe, like the bombing of Baghdad happened, and watching it go out live and just being like, holy fucking shit, this is happening. Yeah. And like the knock-on effect. I mean, I was in the military, I didn't go to Iraq, but I knew people that had been there. I knew people that had worked as medics there. I worked at the decompression camp in Cyprus for the guys coming back from Afghanistan and Iraq. This is something that was a tangible, all right, this is when this shit can go really fucking badly wrong. And that the kids that are coming up now haven't had that. So I don't know if they can see the consequence of it's all a bit of a meme and a bit of a troll and a bit of a laugh. And it's like, well, but yet until someone says, all right, you're picking up a gun now, you're being conscripted. And they don't know, because I mean, Vietnam wasn't even that. I mean, you talk about growing up in like the Thatcher years, like that's not that far in the rear view from that. And before then, the Second World War. So there's been an environment where young people have been there's a consequence to political bullshit and its violence and suffering. Whereas there's a kind of camp of kids coming up now that they don't get that. They might be about to get it fucking really badly in the next few years, but we don't know.
When I was in high school, we would watch video. Some of it was like real footage from the camps at Auschwitz, and even the little arseholes in the class sat silently watching this in quiet horror, knowing this is the worst thing, that this has to be one of the worst things that humanity has ever participated in. This is what can you even say about it?
I knew parents that I know the tapes you're talking about. I think there was like, they were in a red VHS box. There was a whole series of them about World War II, and there was one that was on the Holocaust. And some parents were really upset when they fixed. A lot of the kids were obviously really upset because we were very young when we were showing this, definitely maybe younger than 10.
Oh.
And the parents were upset because their children had been upset by the imagery, and the history teacher was getting notes, complaints in, and he completely stood his ground and went, they need to be showing this. Because I remember watching it and like the bodies being pushed by the diggers into the grave sites, and your brain process, this isn't a special effect. This isn't, because you can tell it's real looking at it, and how the impact that
at
had.
that point in time, even the little arseholes, even the worst little arseholes in the class
We're silent.
Now, more and more, I hear from teachers that I know, from parents that I know whose children are in high school, there is a growing acceptance of Holocaust denialism. There's absolutely, because these kids have not been taught any kind of media literacy, and because there has been an assumption that because our generation grew up with the internet, we were better with technology than our parents were. The assumption was that that would just continue, and you know, these toddlers pick up an iPad and they're great with it. Aye, they're great poking about an iPad, but that doesn't mean that they're going to get on TikTok and go, well, that's nonsense. No one's taught them. Nobody's taught them digital media literacy or any kind of media literacy or critical analysis. They can't do it. So they will just swallow any old horseshit that they hear because they're hearing it from such a young age. They're like, you're 10 and you're hearing all these, there's a secret conspiracy that you don't have privy to, and this is why everything's bad, and this is why your dad lost his job, and it's these, and it's the Jews, and the Holocaust. But I mean, did the Holocaust really happen? Here are 5 facts that we know that throw that into doubt. And they're hearing this alongside, and they're hearing, these are like 20-second videos. So it's there and then it's gone, and it's there and it's gone. But it's in your algorithm now, so you're going to see more complementary content. And it's got to a point where there's not any sort of any awareness that what you're saying is horrifying. What you're saying is not okay to say. What that used to be a total taboo, and now you've got 15-year-olds going about and saying it, and maybe some of them saying it because they think they're trolling, but other just completely believe it, and they don't know why it's controversial, that they're saying it. And this is a growing thing, that the current generation of like the 18-year-old white men who voted for Trump, it was like the first time in a long time that that generation were skewing as or more conservative than their parents, because the entire media diet has been carefully prepared for them, because the left, the Democrats, the sort of, none of them know how to, or even had the thought to capitalise on these emergent technologies to use them as propaganda tools. But obviously the worst fucking elements are going to do that, and that's exactly what they've done. That's why you've got 8-year-olds going into school calling a teacher a dumb whore who should be at home because she's a woman, and like because they've been listening to Andrew Tate. And yes, there's an element of parental responsibility, but you can be a responsible parent, and if your 8-year-old is pals with another 8-year-old whose parents give him unrestricted internet time, all of a sudden your 8-year-old's coming home calling you a dumb bitch.
Yeah.
There's also the parents do it as well. They'll read the thing and not query it. So the kid will copy that, because that's a lot of the way kids learn is not by being directly taught. It's about observational learning. So if they start overhearing conversations between the mum and dad, where I was reading on Facebook today, and then insert Holocaust denial story, whatever else it is, and the kids are, all right, I guess that's just what you do then. You just echo what you read. My dad told me a story, I must remember maybe 10 years ago now, and he was out in Africa. I can't remember actually what country it was in Africa, but he said that when he did a visit, I think it was to a school, and the kids were allowed to ask him like a question, and he said that the first question he had was, what does snow feel like? And the second question was, is there such a thing as the New World Order? And that's because the third world's a really interesting one with this, because although most places you go will probably not have plumbing, they will now have they'll have the internet, they'll have smartphones. So that it's kind of a window into where we're now at, if you like, where, because again, to come back to the media literacy thing, well, that's not obviously something that would have been taught. And it's, if you just hand that tech to somebody that's not been trained in how to, when we say use it, it's not just pushing the buttons on it or swiping, it's about taking the information and then processing it. So like at the time when I was back to the school thing, at the time for me, it was probably what I want to learn how the plumbing's done. But the Iraq thing was in the background of that, because you were seeing how the media was being used for that. And I think that the way that that was just dismissed as, this is something we don't have to teach, and to be a bit conspiratorial about it, that feels like something, well, it casts it's the government, that they don't know how the plumbing's done, they don't know how any of this works, and therefore people will just fall for it hook, line and sinker. But this is all history repeating. It was the same thing after the printing press happened, the same thing after the film it was first coming out. Goebbels used all of this to his advantage at the time, and this is just the modern equivalency. But the embarrassment is we haven't learned anything. We haven't taken that from
Well, the average adult consumes something like 8 times more information than they did 10 years ago. They don't really have the same metric for kids, because we weren't really studying how up to date with the news kids were. But now they might not think they're not sitting down watching the news with their parents, but they're scrolling TikTok for hours. That's hundreds of viewpoints that they're hearing, unfiltered through an app on their phone in their bedroom on their own. You don't know what your kid's being radicalised into. You don't know, unless you have restrictions on the phone, which most parents don't even know how, like, kids know how to get around them and parents don't. It's an extremely scary time, and especially given that the billionaires who own these apps are in Trump's pocket, or really Trump's in theirs. But they're all real cozy. It's a very, I'm not extremely hopeful. A few years ago, everyone was like, Gen Z is going to save us. They're not. I don't think they're going to save us. I think that the demonstration of total media illiteracy, and like, they're quite, how do I want to say this? So it's like unashamed stupidity. Like, they're quite open and proud about how little they know and little they care to know. Because, oh, well, I saw this, but I heard this, but I heard that, but I heard this. And there's no curiosity there. It's just, it's total algorithmic capture. And it's our fault. We handed our kids over to Silicon Valley. We were like, there and you go. I know we don't really know what these devices are going to do if you just pump it directly into my child's brain pan for 12 hours at a time with no restriction. But try it out on them, see what happens. I'm sure nothing bad could happen. And not only are they all fucking anxiety-ridden, lonely, isolated people, because this is the thing of social people are lonelier than they ever have been before, because these things are designed to keep you isolated. We have no, like,
This is so depressing.
I know. It's everybody up. There's an asteroid.
I was thinking, even for me, that was
Yeah,
a little bit.
I'll cheer everybody up. There's an asteroid heading towards us. It's got something like a 2% chance of hitting the Earth. Oh, about 18 months time.
Too.
Yeah, I know.
There is a slight silver lining to the Clyde, in that you're right, absolutely right. Like, all these negative aspects of the way communication comes to us these days. But the flip side of that is that we do have information that would have been held back from us in the past. So people who are maybe more marginalised, trans people or gay people who wouldn't have had a community in the past now can do that. Especially, young people who, if all their media was intermediated by their parents and their teachers at one point, they just wouldn't have known how to deal with it. So, for every suicide forum, there's another forum which tells you how to live a good and productive life. So it's not all that negative. The problem is, how do we mitigate the problems from the bad stuff? And I don't really know there's a good answer for that.
How do we differentiate the quality of information?
I think it's about a lot, but it's leading by example as well. I think part of the problem has been the idea that, like, if we kid is an environment where it comes in the living room and mum and dad are on phones, tablets, whatever, the elder brother, sisters on that, the normalization of that, and then the normalization of all the conversations are centered on, I was reading this, I was watching, that I think is not the environment. The environment you want to kind of create is that the kid comes down and like you're playing a musical instrument, you're painting something, you're reading a book, or whatever. It's not to entirely disengage, because I think to your point, like some of this tech can be used in a positive way, but you have to you have to do that, because the kid will, if you use it in a negative way, the kid will do that. And the reality is, and I know millennials are really guilty for patting themselves in the fucking back, we've completely blown this one. Maybe not you and I personally, but I mean, we have just absolutely gobbled up this shite and used it in all the wrong ways.
There is a trend of like younger people going monk mode, and like getting a dumb phone and all this. Get away from it.
I think what will potentially happen with a certain demographic is that, you see your parents and teachers doing things, you go, that's fucking lame, I don't want to do that. And you rebel and you do what Free's saying there and go monk mode.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, that's what happens. I don't do social media at all anymore. I'll sometimes see screenshots, or I'll see things that have been put in, and I don't do it. I told you all before, I don't hear what anybody else has to say. So I just was like, nah, I'm getting rid of it all. But I commute every day. Well, not every day, but when I go into the office, when I can be bothered getting up and getting dressed and going into the office, and I commute, I have my phone in the train, and I've got my New York Times crossword, and I feel like to do that while I'm commuting. But in the last couple of months, I'm just like, nah, I'll do my crossword in the morning when I get up with my coffee. And when I commute, I'll listen to a podcast, but I'm just like sitting, my phone's away. I'm hardly on my phone anymore. Everyone's complaining about it because I never message anyone back anymore. I need to try and find a balance. But the point being, now that I'm not on my phone and I'm sitting and I'm eyes up, I'm like, it's actually embarrassing watching all these adults sitting, and it's like a baby with a dummy.
Like, yeah.
It's actually, and I'm like, this is actually horrifying.
Yeah, I mean, I have my train journey is 35 minutes in either direction, roughly. So I'm an hour 10 on the train every day. And I, in part, actually, purely because the network signal is so bad for much of the journey,
Yeah.
I actually tend to put some music on or a podcast on, and I tend to be reading a book, or in the morning I do like 20 minutes of Duolingo, like trying to upgrade my schoolgirl French. But you look out across, like for much of the journey, actually the internet won't work at all properly on my phone. It'll take you fucking 3 minutes to load a page. So the phone goes away because it doesn't work. And yeah, looking up at the carriage of people who are still fucking, trying to get, like when you go through that fucking Shoreland silo of the big walls, there's no internet there, but they're obviously fucking tapping away and tapping away. And they're all walking through the station. People are like into the phone, walking around, fucking walking into you, getting in your way, down the street as well. It's like, if you need to do that, stand still. Stop and stand still.
They don't need to.
No, I
don't
know.
need to. And it is just that, like, I'm not by any means, by any stretch of the imagination, I'm not like an anti-tech. Tech is a bad guy. I've always, I think, been quite measured about tech isn't good or bad. It's how we use it. And I think it's totally fine if you want to be on your phone in your commute, fucking fire in. I have my headphones in my commute because, so if my headphones died, if I had to for 3 seconds listen to the conversation of all people worried about me, I would top myself. I have to have my headphones in. I do what you want in your commute. It was just that just the visual of sitting there being like, this is embarrassing. I'm embarrassed for us as a species.
Listen, I'm not doing it at the moment because the weather's just been fucking miserable. But when I was taking the bike on the train and jumping off the train with the bike and sort of cycling a couple of miles to and from work, and the amount of people who are on like paths and pavements or roads on their fucking phones, like this.
I think the thing just to be a big chat, we should wrap this up, but just on that note about being on the phone, I think if you're just like an individual like woman going to work, I'm not gonna have a go at that, but I think that with the parenting thing, I was thinking about this actually through the prism of non-alcoholic beer the other night, where I was thinking about how, like, for me, if I had kids, I wouldn't really want to be certainly not drunk around them, but I don't think alcohol, to me, I'm sort of coming down the path of like, maybe that's not a good thing to have around a kid. And I'm thinking non-alcoholic beer, but of course the kid won't be able to differentiate between it's got alcohol in it or not. You know, what you want to have is a situation where like, what are you drinking? You know, uncle, whatever. And I'm like, you know, it's orange juice.
So that's why you put your whiskey in a teacup.
Oh yeah, fucking note that one down. Yeah, right. But yeah, like, I'm having a juice. Would you like some of the juice? You know, it's like that. Whereas the same thing with the use of the phones. Even if you're doing something relatively kind of eyebrows up, like a crossword or whatever, the kid won't know the difference.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying about the visual distinction of what are you doing, dad, uncle, whatever, and then demonstrating in front of them. This is how you do, and you can use the tech, but as a tool for creativity, a tool for learning. But here's where you go to learn. It shouldn't just be what it's become. The kids are growing up thinking these things are basically the way it'd be like living as a child back when the Game Boy was a thing when I was growing up. It'd be like if every adult was like this, just playing a Game Boy all the time. You know, that's what it would be like.
Just playing
Yes.
games. Yeah.
But the messaging that you're unconsciously implanting is that it's socially normal to be just sat playing your Game Boy all the time. And I think that's the thing that whenever I'm on the train, it's not so much like people going to work or whoever that I feel bad about. It's see the parents where it's like they're on a tablet and the kids watching Peppa Pig on a fucking tablet. And I'm like, talk to the fucking thing. Look out the window. Have a conversation with your fucking child. Like, how can you not? Like, you've gone through the whole burden of fucking childbirth and changing the nap. This is the fun bit. Like, going out on the train. That's the whole reason why you have them. You know, and that's the part that you can't explain that in a way that makes fucking sense to me whatsoever.
It's because you've not got any kids.
I know.
Kids are really fucking irritating.
Flash forward. Like, I know. Well,
Not my kids, darlings.
Laura's sister is about to have a wee baby, and we might be changing our tune and everything I've just said, and I'm like, there's the tablet, watch Bluey and shut up. I don't know. I don't think I'd ever be like that.
I think you're right. So
The tablets are fine. Like giving a kid a tablet to watch a cartoon is the same as them sitting in front of the TV watching a cartoon.
It's all right. You would at the time.
Plonk your toddler in front of a TV for 8 hours and just leave it. This is the difference. It's how we use technology. It's also shaping how the perception of the world. There was a wee girl on a plane that I was on, and her mum had given her an iPad, and it was a game with like fish in a bowl that you had to, and it was a stylus, and she was trying to catch this fish, and she was getting frustrated, and she went to try to reach into the screen to grab the fish because there's no, in her little brain, there's no difference.
So mums are works in social work. There are now kids that don't know how books work. They try and scroll. They don't understand that to continue you have to turn the page because they've been conditioned to be swiping. That's now apparently not. I mean, I'm saying it's a thing. It's not going to be all the kids, but like there have been documented cases.
Thank goodness Kash Patel has written a children's book.
Thank goodness none of them will read it. Got the safest thing for them.
they are right. Like, you know, all this stuff we've talked about, it's kind of depressing. We can't have any effect on America or its politics whatsoever. And we can have almost pretty little impact on our own country's politics as well, to be honest. But you can have an effect in your own life and your kids' lives. And like, that's it. You've got to just like take responsibility for the areas of your life that you can control.
Yeah.
And then, you know, if you can do that, then, you know, it'll probably make you a bit happier and not have to worry about things as much.
In theory, the butterfly effect hopefully springs off that and gradually everything gets better around you. But we'll wait and see. It's either that or World War III or at least Civil War II for the Yanks.
Can I just get some confirmation that I am sitting here being talked off the ledge with a positivity speech by the nihilist Ferendi guy?
Well, I think you need to go through it.
It's where I've fallen.
Once you go through right through nihilism and realise that actually there's no meaning or about anything in the whole universe,
You can just chill.
then it's very relaxing. Once you realise that,
No. It reminds me of the thing that Patton Oswalt in his stand-up, he was talking about his late wife, who had been like a criminal reporter, and how he was sort of really getting into. She was an atheist. She didn't believe there was any order to the world. She was like, no, honestly, it's chaos. He's like, no, but how can you say that? Because she was like, no, it's chaos. Be kind. It is chaos out there. Just be kind to people. And I think that's really beautiful. I really like that. I think we should do more of that. Yeah, it's chaos.
once we've killed Jeff Bezos,
After we have killed Jeff Bezos, hung on and quartered him so that we can put his head and limbs at the full corporate outside the offices of Google, Apple, everyone else, as a warning to the rest of them.
First rule of podcasting, always end on a death threat. According to our lawyers, this was not a death threat. We should make it very clear this was not a death threat.
No, I'm just memeing. Haha, just a meme, just a meme.
Can't you snowflakes take a joke?
A death threat like gesture was used.